Are you kidding me? I have class in 20 minutes. I need these copies now. I'm sorry, it's jammed.
The copy room at Westbrook Academy was small, crowded, and always too hot. Two massive printers hummed constantly, churning out worksheets, tests, and handouts for 500 students. Angela Morrison stood at the main copier, carefully feeding papers into the document feeder. She was a black woman in her late 30s, dressed casually in jeans and a simple burgundy sweater. Her natural hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and she wore minimal makeup. She looked like she could be anyone, a parent volunteer, a student teacher, maybe administrative staff. She'd been making copies for 20 minutes now, 200 pages. Her husband had asked her to help prepare materials for an upcoming staff development day while the regular admin assistant was out sick. She didn't mind. She'd come in early, made herself coffee in the staff lounge, and settled in to help. The door burst open. "Oh, you have got to be kidding me." Angela looked up to see a white woman in her early 50s storming into the copy room. She wore an expensive-looking navy dress with statement jewelry, a thick gold necklace and matching bracelet. Her blonde hair was styled in perfect waves. Everything about her screamed, "I'm important." This was Diane Kruger. Angela knew who she was. Everyone knew who Diane Kruger was. 23 years at Westbrook Academy. Department chair of English. Self-appointed queen of the staff. The teacher everyone walked on eggshells around because crossing her meant making your professional life miserable. "Are you serious right now?" Diane's voice was sharp, annoyed. "How long are you going to be on that machine?" Angela glanced at the counter. "I have about 75 pages left. Maybe 10 more minutes." 10 minutes. Diane set her papers down with an aggressive slap. "I have a class in 20 minutes. I need these copies now." "I'm sorry," Angela said politely, "but I was here first, and I'm almost done." "I don't care if you were here first," Diane interrupted. "I'm a teacher. I have students waiting. What are you even copying? PTA flyers, volunteer schedules." Angela kept her voice calm. "Actually, I'm preparing materials for—" "I don't need your life story." Diane stepped closer, invading Angela's space. "I need you to stop what you're doing and let me use this machine. My work is more important." The words hung in the air. Angela took a slow breath. "I understand you're in a hurry, but there's another copier right there." She pointed to the second machine against the wall. "That one is broken," Diane snapped. "Has been for 3 days, which you would know if you actually worked here instead of just wandering around taking up space." Angela's jaw tightened, but she kept her voice even. "The machine isn't broken. It just needs to be reset. If you press the—" "Oh, now you're going to tell me how the copiers work." Diane's laugh was cruel. "I've been using these machines for over 20 years. I think I know better than some random volunteer who probably doesn't even know how to work half the buttons." Angela set down the papers she was holding. "I'm not a volunteer. Parent helper. Then, whatever." Diane waved her hand dismissively. "The point is, you need to move. Now. I don't have time for this." "I'll be done in 10 minutes," Angela repeated, her voice firmer now. "You're welcome to wait, or you can use the other copier. I'd be happy to show you how to reset it." Diane's face flushed red. "You'd be happy to show me? Who do you think you are?" Before Angela could respond, another teacher walked in, a younger woman named Sarah Chen, who had been at Westbrook for 3 years. "Oh, good, Sarah." Diane turned to her like she found an ally. "Can you believe this? I have a class starting in 20 minutes. I need copies desperately, and this person is refusing to let me use a machine." Sarah looked between them uncomfortably. Diane, if she was here first." "She's a volunteer, Sarah, or a parent, not actual staff. MY needs supersede hairs." "I'm not a volunteer," Angela said again, her patience wearing thin. "And even if I were, that wouldn't give you the right to speak to me this way." "Speak to you what way?" Diane's voice rose. "I'm speaking to you like someone who's wasting MY time and interfering with real work. If you don't like it, maybe you should reconsider volunteering at a school where professionals need access to equipment." Sarah shifted uncomfortably. "Diane, maybe we should just—" "Stay out of this," Sarah. Diane's attention was fully on Angela now. I'm going to ask you one more time to step aside and let me use this copier. And if you refuse, I'm going to report you to administration for interfering with instructional preparation. Angela crossed her arms. Report me to administration. Please do. Diane blinked, clearly not expecting that response. Excuse me. I said go ahead and report me. Angela's voice was calm but ice cold. In fact, why don't we walk down to the principal's office right now? I'm sure he'd love to hear about this conversation. Oh, you think you're going to complain about me? Diane laughed again, but there was an edge of uncertainty now. Do you have any idea who I am? I'm the department chair. I have tenure. I've been here for over 2 decades. If you think marching into the principal's office and whining is going to get you anywhere, you're delusional. She stepped even closer, her voice dropping to a threatening hiss. Let me explain how things work here, since you clearly don't understand. There's a hierarchy. Teachers are at the top, especially teachers like Emmy who put in their time and earned respect. Then there's admin staff, then support staff, and at the very bottom, absolutely dead last, are random people who wander in off the street thinking they can use school resources whenever they feel like it. Angela didn't move, didn't blink. So here's what's going to happen, Diane continued. You're going to gather up your little papers. You're going to step away from MY Copier, and you're going to wait until I'm done. And if you have a problem with that, you can take it up with whoever's in charge of volunteers, and they'll explain to you that this is how things work in a real school. The room was silent except for the hum of the copier. Sarah looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. Angela reached over and calmly hit the pause button on the copier. The machine stopped mid-page. What are you doing? Diane demanded. You're right, Angela said quietly. We should go talk to the principal. Right now. I don't have time to. Make time. Angela's voice had a steel edge now, because this conversation isn't over until we talk to administration. So either we can walk down there together, or I can go by myself and share my side of the story first. Your choice. Diane's eyes narrowed. Are you threatening me? I'm giving you an option. Come with me to the principal's office, or don't. But this, Angela gestured between them, is getting addressed. Today. Now. For the first time, Diane looked uncertain, but her pride wouldn't let her back down. Fine, she spat. Let's go. I'll be happy to explain to Principal Morrison why volunteers need to stay in their lane and stop interfering with actual educators doing actual work. Great. Angela picked up her purse. Sarah, would you mind coming as a witness? Since you heard the whole conversation. Sarah's eyes widened. I really don't want to get involved. You're already involved, Angela said, not unkindly. You heard everything. I'd appreciate if you could just tell the truth about what was said. Sarah looked at Diane, who was glaring at her with barely concealed fury. Okay, Sarah said weakly. The 3 of them walked out to the copy room and down the main hallway. Students were starting to arrive for the day, lockers slamming, voices echoing. A few looked curiously at the strange trio, 2 teachers and an unknown woman walking with obvious tension between them. Diane kept up a running commentary under her breath. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. 23 years I've been here, and now I'm being dragged to the principal's office like a child because some random person got offended. Angela didn't respond, just kept walking, her face calm but her mind racing. This was about to get very interesting. They reached the main office. The secretary, Mrs. Patterson, a kind older woman who'd been at Westbrook forever, looked up with surprise. Diane, what's going on? Is Principal Morrison available? Diane's voice was sharp, authoritative. I need to file a formal complaint about this person interfering with instructional preparation and then threatening me when I asked her to follow proper procedures. Mrs. Patterson's eyes widened. Let me check if He's available, Angela said quietly. Trust me. Mrs. Patterson looked at Angela, really looked at her, and something flickered across her face. Recognition? Concern? I'll let him know you're here, she said carefully. She picked up the phone, pressed a button. Mr. Morrison? I have Diane Kruger here, and she's asking to see you. She's with... Mrs. Patterson paused, looking at Angela. She's with Mrs. Morrison and Sarah Chen. There was a pause. Diane's face went pale. What did you just say? Mrs. Patterson hung up. He'll see you now. Go right in. What did you call her? Diane's voice was barely a whisper now. Her eyes locked on Angela. Angela met her gaze steadily. Mrs. Morrison. Angela Morrison. The principal's wife. The color drained completely from Diane's face. No, she breathed. No, that's not... You're not. I am, Angela said calmly. I've been married to David Morrison for 12 years. We have 2 children. I work from home as a curriculum consultant, which is why I'm not here every day. But I come in sometimes to help out when needed. She gestured toward the principal's office door. And right now, my husband is waiting to hear about why you think volunteers and parents are at the bottom of the school hierarchy. Why you think some people matter more than others based on their job titles. And why you thought it was appropriate to speak to me, or anyone, the way you just did. Diane was shaking now. I didn't know. No, you didn't. Angela's voice was quiet but cutting. You didn't know who I was. So you felt completely comfortable being cool, dismissive, and disrespectful. Because you thought I was someone who couldn't fight back. Someone who didn't matter. She opened the door to the principal's office. Shall we? The principal's office was spacious and well-lit, with large windows overlooking the school's courtyard. Behind the desk sat David Morrison, a tall black man in his mid-40s, wearing a gray suit and burgundy tie. His face was professional, neutral, but his eyes were sharp. He stood when they entered. Diane, Sarah, please, sit down. His voice was calm, controlled. Then his eyes moved to his wife, and they softened just slightly. Angela, you okay? I'm fine, Angela said, though we need to talk about what just happened. David nodded and gestured to the chairs. Everyone sit. Diane, Mrs. Patterson said you wanted to file a complaint. Diane looked like she might be sick. She sat down slowly, her hands trembling in her lap. Mr. Morrison, I didn't realize. I had no idea that was your wife. That's becoming clear, David said. But why don't you start from the beginning? What happened? Diane opened her mouth, but no words came out. Sarah spoke up quietly. Mr. Morrison, we were in the copy room. Mrs. Morrison, Angela, was making copies. Diane came in and needed to use a copier. There was some disagreement about who should use it first. Some disagreement, Angela repeated with a bitter smile. That's one way to put it. David looked at his wife. Angela, what happened? In your words. Angela took a breath. I was making copies of the staff development materials you asked me to prepare, the reading comprehension workshop packets. Diane came in and told me I needed to stop immediately because she needed the copier. I explained I'd be done in 10 minutes and suggested she use the other machine. She said it was broken. I offered to show her how to reset it. She refused and told me that my work didn't matter because I was just a volunteer or a parent, and her work as a teacher was more important. David's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. She also said, Angela continued, that there's a hierarchy in schools, that teachers are at the top, especially ones with tenure like her, and that volunteers and random people who wander in off the street are at the very bottom. Her words, not mine. That's not, Diane started. Sarah was there. Angela interrupted. Sarah, did I accurately describe what was said? Sarah looked miserable. She glanced at Diane, then at the principal, then down at her hands. Yes, she whispered. That's what happened. David was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. Diane, is this accurate? Diane's face was red, tears forming in her eyes. Mr. Morrison, I was stressed. I have a class starting soon. I didn't mean it the way it sounded. I just needed to make copies and... Did you say those things? David's voice cut through her excuses. Did you tell my wife that volunteers and parents are at the bottom of the school hierarchy? That her work didn't matter? That she needed to remember her place? I didn't know she was your wife. Diane burst out. If I had known. If you had known, you would have been respectful, David finished. But because you thought she was just a parent or a volunteer, someone you perceived as having no power, you felt comfortable being cruel. He leaned forward. Diane, that's not a defense. That's exactly the problem. The room was silent. Sarah, David said, "Thank you for coming. I know this is uncomfortable, but I appreciate you being willing to tell the truth. You can go." Sarah practically ran out of the office. David turned his attention fully to Diane. 23 years, he said quietly. You've been at this school for 23 years. Department chair, mentor teacher, someone younger staff look up to, and this is how you treat people. I made a mistake, Diane started. This wasn't a mistake, David interrupted. A mistake is accidentally saying something hurtful. This was a deliberate, sustained interaction where you repeatedly dismissed, belittled, and disrespected someone you thought couldn't affect you. That's not a mistake. That's a character issue. Diane was crying openly now. Please, Mr. Morrison, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to disrespect your wife. If I had known. Stop saying that, Angela said, her voice sharp. Stop saying if you had known. Because that just proves you think respect is something you give based on who people are connected to, not something you give because people deserve it. She leaned forward. Diane, you didn't disrespect the principal's wife. You disrespected a human being who was doing work he decided wasn't important. If I had been the superintendent's wife, would that change what you said? What if I was a school board president's wife? Or a major donor's wife? Where's the line where I become worthy of basic courtesy? Diane couldn't answer. Or here's a better question, Angela continued. What if I actually was just a parent volunteer? What if I was a mom who took time off work to come help the school? Would it be okay to treat me that way then? Would it be okay to tell me I'm at the bottom of the hierarchy and my work doesn't matter? No, Diane whispered. But you did it anyway, Angela said. Because you thought you could. Because you thought I had no power and you had all of it. David spoke up. Diane, I'm going to be very direct with you. What happened this morning constitutes workplace harassment and hostile environment violations. If Angela were actually a volunteer, she'd be well within her rights to file a formal complaint. The fact that she's my wife makes this even worse, because it suggests you have such deep-seated disrespect for support staff and volunteers that you didn't even hesitate before saying these things. He pulled out a file. I'm also going to tell you something you may not know. Over the past year, I've received 3 informal complaints about your treatment of non-teaching staff. One from a custodian you snapped at for cleaning during planning period. One from a cafeteria worker you berated for not having enough napkins at a staff luncheon. And one from a parent volunteer who said you made her feel invisible and unwelcome. Diane's face went white. I didn't pursue those complaints formally because they weren't severe enough individually and because you're generally a strong teacher. But this... He gestured between Diane and Angela. This shows a pattern of believing that some people matter and others don't. A pattern of treating people with contempt when you think you can get away with it. What happens now? Diane asked, her voice shaking. David leaned back in his chair. That depends on you. Diane Kruger sat in her empty classroom during her planning period, staring at nothing. The meeting with Principal Morrison had ended with a 5-day unpaid suspension and mandatory professional development on workplace respect and hierarchy awareness. When she returned, she'd be on probationary status for the rest of the year. But the real punishment was the shame. By lunchtime, the entire school knew. Not because the Morrisons had told anyone. They'd been professional and discreet. But because Sarah Chen, in a moment of stress-induced gossip, had told one person, who told another, who told another. By the time students were dismissed for the day, everyone knew that Diane Kruger had gone off on a woman in the copy room, called her a bottom-of-the-hierarchy volunteer who didn't matter, and demanded she move aside for more important work. And that woman had been the principal's wife. The teacher's lounge was buzzing with it. Diane had walked in to get her lunch and felt the conversation die instantly. Eyes turned to her, some sympathetic, some judgmental, some simply curious. She grabbed her lunch and left without speaking to anyone. Now she sat alone, replaying the morning in her head. If I had known... Good. She'd said that so many times. If I had known she was your wife. If I had known who she was. If I had known it mattered. But that was the problem, wasn't it? She only cared because it turned out Angela Morrison was connected to someone with power. If Angela really had been just a parent volunteer, would Diane feel any remorse? Probably not. That realization made her sick. There was a knock on her classroom door. Diane looked up to see Marcus Williams, the head custodian. He was a black man in his 60s, always friendly, always professional, always invisible to people like Diane. Mrs. Kruger? Got a minute. Diane quickly wiped her eyes. Marcus. Yes, come in. Marcus entered, carrying his cleaning cart. Just doing my rounds. Wanted to check if you need anything. No, I'm fine. Thank you. Marcus nodded, started to leave, then paused. Can I tell you something, Mrs. Kruger? Diane looked up. Of course. I heard what happened this morning, with Mrs. Morrison. Diane's face flushed with shame. I'm sure everyone's heard. Probably, Marcus agreed. Small school. Word travels. He leaned against the doorframe. I've been working here for 18 years. And in those 18 years, I can count on one hand the number of times you've acknowledged me. Maybe a nod here or there. But mostly, I'm furniture to you. Part of the building. You walk past me every single day, and I might as well be invisible. Diane felt tears burning again. Marcus, I'm not saying this to make you feel bad, Marcus interrupted gently. I'm saying it because what happened with Mrs. Morrison? That wasn't an isolated incident. That's who you've been for a long time. You just got caught this time. He pulled out a paper towel and started wiping down her desk, something he did in every classroom, every day, that Diane had never once thanked him for. The thing about respect, Marcus continued, is it's not something you give because you have to. It's something you give because people deserve it. Every person. Every day. Whether they're the principal's wife or they're the guy who empties your trash. He finished wiping and stepped back. You've got 5 days to think about who you want to be when you come back. I hope you make the right choice. He wheeled his cart out, leaving Diane alone with her thoughts. That evening, Angela Morrison sat in her home office, trying to focus on work but finding her mind wandering back to the morning's confrontation. David came in, loosening his tie. You okay? Honestly, I don't know. Angela swiveled her chair to face him. Part of me feels vindicated. Like finally, someone who's been treating people badly got called out for it. But another part of me feels, I don't know. Sad. David sat down on the edge of her desk. Sad how? Sad that it took being your wife for her to face consequences. Sad that if I really had been just a parent volunteer, she probably would have gotten away with it. Sad that there are probably dozens of people she's treated that way over the years, and they had no recourse because they didn't happen to be married to the principal. She looked up at her husband. How many volunteers has she made feel unwelcome? How many parents has she dismissed? How many support staff has she talked down to? And she got away with all of it because the system protects people like her and ignores people like them. David was quiet for a moment. You're right. The system is broken. But at least in this case, she didn't get away with it. Because of who I'm married to, Angela pointed out. Not because what she did was wrong. It was wrong regardless, David said firmly. And I would have disciplined her regardless. But you're right that it probably wouldn't have been reported if you weren't my wife. Most people don't report this stuff because they don't think it'll matter. He stood up, pacing. You know what bothers me most? She's probably taught hundreds of students over 23 years, and she's been modeling this hierarchy mentality the whole time, teaching them, whether she realizes it or not, that some people matter and others don't, that respect is earned through status instead of given through basic human decency. So what do we do about it? Angela asked. David thought for a moment. We change the culture, not just with Diane, but school-wide. Make it clear that everyone, teachers, staff, parents, volunteers, everyone deserves respect. Create actual accountability for this behavior. And Diane gets a choice, David said. She can learn from this and become better. Or she can stay bitter and defensive and eventually she'll be gone. But either way, this stops being acceptable at Westbrook Academy. 5 days later, Diane Kruger returned to school. She'd spent her suspension doing the required professional development, 40 hours of online courses about workplace respect, unconscious bias, and hierarchical thinking. She'd watched videos of people sharing stories about being dismissed and belittled by people in power. She'd read articles about the psychological damage of workplace contempt. And she'd done a lot of thinking. She arrived an hour early, before most staff, went straight to the main office. "Is Mrs. Morrison here?" she asked Mrs. Patterson. "She's in the conference room, helping prepare material for the literacy initiative." Diane took a breath. "Can you ask if she'd be willing to talk to me?" Mrs. Patterson studied her for a moment, then nodded. "I'll ask." 5 minutes later, Diane sat across from Angela Morrison in the conference room. Angela's expression was neutral, professional. "Thank you for seeing me," Diane started. Her voice shook slightly. "I know you don't owe me anything, but I wanted to apologize, face to face. Not because your husband told me to, but because you deserve to hear it." Angela waited. "What I said to you was inexcusable," Diane continued. "The way I spoke to you. The things I implied about volunteers and parents not mattering. The way I dismiss your work and your right to be there. All of it was wrong." She took a breath. "But more than that, I've been thinking about what you said. About how I only cared once I knew who you were. And you were right. If you'd been just a parent volunteer, I probably would have left that copy room feeling justified and righteous. I would have told the story to other teachers at lunch as an example of how volunteers don't understand school priorities." Angela's expression softened slightly. "I've spent 5 days taking courses and watching videos about workplace respect," Diane said. "And the thing that kept coming up was this question: how do you treat people when you think it doesn't matter?" And the answer was, "Not well. I treat people badly when I think they can't affect me, when I think their opinion doesn't count, when I think I have power and they don't." She looked directly at Angela. "That's not who I want to be, and I'm horrified that it's who I've been." Angela was quiet for a moment. "Diane, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "When was the last time you thanked Marcus Williams for cleaning your classroom?" Diane blinked at the unexpected question. I don't know. I don't think I ever have." "When was the last time you acknowledged the cafeteria staff when they serve you lunch?" "I don't." Diane trailed off. "When was the last time you learned the name of a parent volunteer and asked about their life outside of what they do for the school?" Diane felt tears forming. "Never. I've never done any of that." "That's the problem," Angela said gently. "It's not just what you said to me. It's a pattern of not seeing people as fully human, of categorizing them as important or unimportant based on their role in your life." She leaned forward. "Diane, I accept your apology, but apologizing to me isn't enough. You need to apologize to every person you've dismissed over the years. And more importantly, you need to change how you see people. All people." "I know," Diane whispered, "and I'm trying. I started this morning by thanking Mrs. Patterson for always being organized and helpful. It felt awkward and forced, but I did it. And you know what she said." Angela waited. She said, "Thank you for noticing." Like she'd been waiting 23 years for someone to acknowledge her work. Diane's voice cracked. "That broke my heart. That someone could work that hard for that long and feel invisible." Angela nodded. "That's the world you helped create, Diane. But it doesn't have to be the world you perpetuate." "It won't be," Diane said firmly. "I promise you, it won't be." 3 months later, Westbrook Academy held its annual Volunteer Appreciation Breakfast. Angela Morrison stood at the front of the cafeteria, looking out at the 60 parent volunteers who had given their time throughout the year. Some had helped in classrooms. Others had organized fundraisers. Some had just made copies and answered phones when needed. All of them mattered. "Thank you all for being here," Angela said warmly. "As you know, I'm Angela Morrison. Some of you know me as a principal's wife, but I prefer to be known as a fellow volunteer who believes in supporting the school community." Light laughter rippled through the room. This year, we wanted to do something different for volunteer appreciation. Instead of just serving you breakfast and giving generic thank you speeches, we asked every teacher to write a personal note to at least one volunteer who impacted their work this year. She gestured to tables covered with small envelopes. Your names are on them, and I hope when you read them, you'll understand how much you truly matter to the school. As volunteers found their envelopes, Angela watched their faces light up. Some got emotional reading their notes. Others smiled with surprise. Diane Kruger approached Angela hesitantly. Mrs. Morrison. Angela, please. Angela. Diane corrected. I just wanted you to know. I wrote 12 notes. One for every volunteer I could remember interacting with this year. And I plan to write more. I'm trying to do better. Angela studied her. Over the past 3 months, she'd watched Diane carefully. Watched her start arriving early to help set up before events. Watched her stop to chat with custodians and cafeteria workers. Watched her learn volunteers' names and ask about their families. It still looked a little uncomfortable sometimes, a little forced, but it was genuine effort. I can see that, Angela said. How does it feel? Diane considered the question. Honestly, exhausting. It's hard to undo 23 years of not paying attention, but also good. I'm seeing people I walked past for years, really seeing them, and they are interesting. They have stories. They matter. She paused. I had coffee with Marcus Williams last week. Did you know he's a published poet? That he chose custodial work because the hours let him care for his mother who has Alzheimer's? That has been quietly mentoring students from difficult backgrounds for over a decade. I did know that, Angela said, but I'm glad you do now. I worked here for 23 years and never bothered to learn any of that, Diane said quietly, because I decided he wasn't worth my time. How many other people have I missed? How many connections did I not make because I was too busy deciding who mattered? Before Angela could respond, a parent volunteer approached, a Latina woman named Maria who had been helping in the front office all year. Mrs. Morrison, I just wanted to say thank you for organizing this, and for the note from Mrs. Kruger. Maria's eyes were shining with tears. She wrote about how much she appreciated my help with the parent communication initiative. She said I was essential to making it work. I've been volunteering here for 3 years, and this is the first time a teacher has made me feel like my work mattered. Diane looked like she might cry. Maria, I'm so sorry it took me this long to say what should have been obvious from the beginning. After Maria walked away, Diane turned to Angela. That's what I rob people of. Recognition, appreciation, the feeling that their work matters. And I did it because I was so focused on my own importance that I couldn't see theirs. But you're seeing it now, Angela pointed out. I am, Diane agreed, and I can never go back to not seeing it. That afternoon, David Morrison sat in his office reviewing the volunteer program feedback forms. The responses were overwhelmingly positive. Volunteers felt appreciated, valued, seen. Angela knocked and entered. How'd the breakfast go from an admin perspective? Really well. Lots of positive feedback. He showed her the forms. Several people specifically mentioned feeling more welcomed by staff this year. More included. Good. Angela sat down. You know, I've been thinking about that day in the copy room. Yeah. Part of me wishes it had never happened. That Diane had just been kind from the beginning. That I'd never had to hear those things or feel that dismissal. Angela paused. But another part of me thinks maybe it needed to happen, because it exposed a problem that's been festering for years, and it created an opportunity to fix it. David nodded. Culture change doesn't happen without disruption. What Diane said to you was horrible, but it also became a catalyst for real conversation about how we treat people in this building. Do you think she's really changed? Angela asked. Or is she just performing because she has to? David considered. I think it started as performance. She was scared and defensive and trying to save her job. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. She's doing things now that no one's requiring. Having conversations no one's monitoring. Making connections that don't benefit her professionally. He pulled out a piece of paper. She submitted a proposal last week for a school-wide initiative called Everyone Matters. It's basically a program to highlight the work of support staff, volunteers, and parent helpers. Monthly recognition, spotlight interviews, that kind of thing. She wants to chair it. Angela raised her eyebrows. Wow. Yeah. I don't think the Diane from 3 months ago would have even conceived of that idea, let alone volunteered to lead it. So people can change, Angela said softly. Some people, when they are willing to do the work. David looked at his wife. You gave her that chance. You could have pushed for her to be fired, and you would have been justified, but you let her have the opportunity to grow. I gave her what everyone deserves, Angela said. A chance to be better than their worst moment. Whether they take it or not is up to them. 6 months after the copy room incident, Westbrook Academy held its end-of-year staff celebration. David Morrison stood at the podium for closing remarks. This has been a year of growth and change, he said. We've had some uncomfortable moments, some difficult conversations, some situations that force us to examine our assumptions and biases. He looked out at his staff. But we've also seen real transformation. I've watched teachers who used to rush past support staff start having actual conversations with them. I've seen volunteers being treated not as free labor but as valued partners. I've seen a culture shift from hierarchy and status to mutual respect and appreciation. His eyes found Diane in the crowd. Some of that change came from people who made mistakes and chose to learn from them, who decided that being uncomfortable in the short term was worth becoming better humans in the long term, who proved that it's never too late to change. After the formal program, Angela found herself standing near the refreshment table with a group that would have been unthinkable a year ago: Diane Kruger, Marcus Williams, Rosa Martinez from the cafeteria, and 3 parent volunteers. They were laughing about something easy and comfortable. Mrs. Morrison, one of the volunteers, a young mother named Jennifer, waved her over. We were just talking about the fall volunteer orientation. Diane suggested we do a reverse shadow day where teachers shadow volunteers to understand what we actually do. Isn't that brilliant? Angela smiled. It really is. Diane looked embarrassed but pleased. I just thought it might help new teachers understand that volunteers aren't just extra hands. They are skilled people with their own expertise who choose to share it with us. That's exactly right, Angela agreed. As the party continued, Angela stepped outside for some air. David found her on the steps overlooking the courtyard. You okay? He asked. Yeah, just thinking. About? Angela watched through the windows as Diane helped Marcus carry some boxes, chatting animatedly about something. About how much can change in 6 months when people actually commit to it. She's not perfect, David noted. She still slips sometimes. Still has moments where the old hierarchy thinking creeps in. But she catches herself now, corrects herself. That's all any of us can do, Angela said. Catch ourselves, correct ourselves, keep trying to be better. She looked at her husband. That morning in the copy room was one of the worst experiences I've had. Being dismissed like that, being told I didn't matter, having my work minimized. She paused. But if it led to this, to a real cultural shift in how people treat each other, then maybe it was worth it. You shouldn't have had to go through that for people to learn basic respect, David said firmly. No, I shouldn't have, Angela agreed. But I did, and we can either let it be just a painful memory, or we can use it as a foundation for something better. She stood up. I choose better. The copy room at Westbrook Academy had been renovated. New machines, better lighting, a small seating area for people waiting their turn, and on the wall, a framed statement. At Westbrook Academy, everyone matters. Teachers, staff, parents, volunteers, we are all essential parts of this community. Respect is not determined by job titles or status. It is given freely to every person because every person has inherent dignity and worth. Below it, a signature, the Westbrook community. Angela Morrison stood looking at it, remembering. Still gets me every time. She turned to see Diane Kruger entering with a stack of papers. Me too, Angela admitted. You know what's funny? Diane said, setting her papers down. I used to rush in here, annoyed when I had to wait, treating it like my time was being wasted. Now I actually enjoy it. I had some of my best conversations with parents and volunteers in this copy room. She paused, including the conversation that changed my life. Change it how? Angela asked, though she had an idea. I was a good teacher, Diane said. Good test scores. Strong curriculum. But I was a terrible human being to anyone I didn't consider my equal. And I didn't even realize it because I'd surrounded myself with people who thought the same way. She looked at the framed statement. That morning, when you revealed who you were and I realized what I'd done, it was the worst moment of my professional life. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to quit. I wanted to pretend it never happened. But you didn't, Angela pointed out. No, I didn't. Because you and David gave me something I didn't deserve, a chance to be better. And I'm trying every day to earn that chance. The copier beeped. Angela's copies were done. As she gathered them, Diane spoke again. Angela, can I tell you something I've never told anyone? Of course. That morning in the copy room wasn't the first time I'd acted like that. It was just the first time I got caught. Diane's voice was thick with emotion. There were so many other moments. So many other people I dismissed or belittled or ignored. And they never said anything because they thought it wouldn't matter. It would have mattered, Angela said quietly. I know that now. But they didn't know it then, because I created an environment where they felt powerless. Diane wiped her eyes. I think about those people sometimes. Wonder if they're okay. If they recovered from the way I made them feel small. If they forgave me even though I never apologized because I didn't even realize I'd done anything wrong. Maybe you should find them, Angela suggested. Apologize now. I've tried. Some have moved away. Some don't want to talk to me. I don't blame them. Diane took a breath. But the ones I can reach, I do. And I tell them, I was wrong. You mattered. You always mattered. And I'm sorry I made you feel otherwise. Angela put a hand on Diane's shoulder. That takes courage. It's the least I can do. Diane managed a small smile. You know what the hardest part is. What? Realizing how much I missed. How many interesting people I never got to know. How many stories I never heard. How many connections I never made. All because I was too busy deciding who was worth my time based on completely arbitrary criteria. She gestured around the copy room. This room used to be a place I rushed through, annoyed at obstacles in my way. Now it's where I met some of the most interesting people at this school. Parents who run businesses. Volunteers who've traveled the world. Support staff with fascinating hobbies and hidden talents. They were always there, Angela pointed out gently. I know. I just couldn't see them. Diane picked up her papers. But I see them now. And I'm never going back to being blind. Moral lesson. Respect is not something you give based on who people are married to, what their job title is, or what power they hold over you. Respect is something you give because every human being has inherent dignity and worth. How you treat people when you think it doesn't matter reveals everything about your character, because it always matters. The volunteer might be the principal's wife, but even if she isn't, she still deserves respect. That's the point.